Wow. Didn't even have to tap a wine glass to get the room to. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this 2025 Don P. Giddens Inaugural Professorial Lecture Series. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ed Schlesinger, and I'm the Benjamin T. Rome Dean of the Whiting School of Engineering, and it is really my pleasure to be here for this IPL, one of my favorite events. In fact, as folks who know me have heard me say before, I truly appreciate the traditions and the what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, the academic kind of programs and processes that we have. It's sometimes good to remember why we do what we do. And it's particularly fitting that our first IPL of this semester is to honor Larry Aronhime, a teaching professor with the W.P. Carey Program at the Center for Leadership Education, where he also directs international programs. And over the years, Larry has taken many of our students overseas to various countries to experience various aspects in their educational journey that they wouldn't experience just here on the Homewood campus. According to the WSE bio, and I questioned this, but that's what it says in your bio, it says that Larry has been teaching for almost 50 years. That is actually correct. Larry is 136 years old. He's one of those people Elon Musk was talking about. But in fact, he has been teaching for at least, by my calculation, 33 of those years here in the Whiting School, because I believe you joined us in 1992.
In different places, but yeah.
But 1992. 25 years in this program. Yes, these are big numbers. He was, in fact, the first full-time faculty member hired by the Center for Leadership Education. He is a graduate and alum of Hopkins, where he earned his bachelor's and master's degrees, and now he teaches at Hopkins and focuses on teaching about innovation and strategy. And you will hear more from Larry about innovations, about how they have three components: a problem, a solution that solves the problem, and a business case that allows the solution to enter the market at scale. And all this based on his both corporate and startup experience. This is something particularly well suited for the education of engineering students, because at the end of the day, although we are academic engineers, we do call ourselves and our students engineers. And what it means to be an engineer is that you not only understand the fundamentals, but you can actually solve a problem, and then you can bring that solution effectively to society. So we'll hear more about that and all that Larry contributes to our school. I would like to take a moment to recognize one of my predecessors, Don Giddens, for whom this inaugural professorial lecture series is named. Don Giddens was the 5th Dean of Engineering at Johns Hopkins, a professor of mechanical engineering, and someone who really valued education and teaching as part of the mission of the school, and so appropriately, we are honoring a teaching faculty member today. And with that, it's now my pleasure to introduce Pam Sheff, the director for the Center for Leadership Education. Pam.
Okay. I've been looking forward to this day for years, 7 to be precise, since I became director of the Center for Leadership Education. No one is more deserving of this recognition than Larry Aronhime, who was the first faculty member in CLE, as Ed said, and who has continued to grow and innovate and lead throughout his long teaching career. With the exception of his time in industry and a brief stint at another local institution, as Ed mentioned, Larry is pretty much a Hopkins lifer. He has a BA and an MS from Hopkins. He has taught for both the Carey and the Bloomberg schools and has been teaching in the Center for Leadership Education since 2000. He has been my colleague since 2006 and my right hand since I became director in 2017. We have co-taught courses, developed curricula, mentored new faculty, and over the course of nearly 2 decades, grown the center together. CLE would not be what it is and would not have the global reach that it now has without his innovative thinking and guiding hand. I want to quote Howard Katz here when he wrote for Larry. "This promotion is so well-deserved and so overdue that my contribution is simply to validate that Professor Aronhime greatly exceeds all the standards for this promotion. My contribution here today is simply to do what Larry never does, and that is talk about himself." He is one of 2 deputy directors in CLE, and he also manages our international programs. But in truth, those titles barely capture all that Larry does for his students, the center, and the Whiting School. To mention just a few of his innovations, he created the business plan competition, which has grown into Hopstart, the new venture challenge. He helped to start an internationally renowned program in BME, CBID, the Center for Biomedical Innovation and Design. And he then developed a theoretical framework and practical process for teaching innovation. His work on innovation has been his focus over the last 10 years and is the subject of his talk today. Universities from Brazil to Israel to the UK and organizations including NATO and the Israel Defense Force regularly invite Larry to lecture and share his ideas. His courses on innovation have become a key pillar of our work in CLE and in other Whiting departments as well. And now he's bringing younger faculty interested in innovation into his classrooms as co-instructors, mentoring them in his methodologies, and thereby enabling CLE to meet the demand for innovation classes and workshops both within Whiting and beyond. Beyond his deep intelligence, his subject matter expertise, his desire to learn, grow, and share that knowledge, the most important quality Larry Aronhime brings to the Whiting School is his generosity. Larry is never, and I mean truly never, too busy for a colleague or a student. If a student or a colleague needs to discuss an idea or ask a question, he will make the time not just to give a quick answer, but to really think the problem through. I have never gone to him with a task he would not undertake, simply because I've told him it is important for the center. Larry's strength as a teacher has been recognized by colleagues as well as students almost from the start of his career at the university. He has won 4 different teaching awards from 2004 to 2020, and undoubtedly would have won others were there not waiting periods between nominations. Larry's teaching, in and out of the classroom, and the courses he developed have changed the trajectory of many young careers. One former student sums up the feeling of many. 2 pages cannot capture the impact Professor Aronhime has had on my life. It would take many more to capture that impact and the impact he has had on the Center for Leadership Education, the student experience at Johns Hopkins, and the many classes of undergraduates and graduates he has taught. Even though Larry does not seek the spotlight, there is actually one mark of recognition that he does yearn for. And so we in CLE would like to fulfill this secret desire this afternoon. Larry, you truly are a rock star.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that anybody younger than me doesn't even know what we're talking about here, okay, and the song. So, but yeah, you can look that up. So you're putting the slides up.
Just click.
Click. Oh, got it. Okay. So that was, a little embarrassing, but thank you, and thank you all for coming today. Today, I would like to tell you a story of how we got here and how I came to teach innovation at Hopkins and where we might be going. So here's the question. Where do you begin a story? So the simplest thing to do is to say, oh, you begin at the beginning. But where exactly is the beginning? For example, if you wanted to tell the story of this august institution, where would you begin? Would you begin with its founding in 1876? Would you begin with the discussions that led to its founding? Would you begin with the creation of research universities in Germany at the beginning of the 19th century? Would you begin with Baltimore's desire to outclass New York? Would you begin with Mr. Hopkins's youth and education? Wherever you decide to begin, it's a choice. And so after much thought, I have chosen to begin my story today with my father. When I was growing up here in Baltimore, the neighborhood would often get together, Saturday afternoons, and what did the men talk about? Always talk about. And the answer is, of course, the war, with occasional excursions into the 1930s. But they would talk about the war. Every man in the neighborhood was either a Holocaust survivor or a veteran of the 29th Division. And if you don't know what that was, watch the movie Saving Private Ryan. It'll give you a sense of their experiences. The exception was, and that's the shoulder patch of the 29th. The exception was, on the right, was my father, who had served with the OSS. And if you don't know what that was, watch the movie The Catcher Was a Spy, and about Moe Berg. And if you don't know who Moe Berg was, that is why the good Lord put those phones in your pockets, okay? So you could look all that up, okay, while we do this. So the war was the dominant event of their lives. They always lived in its shadow for good and for ill. And no matter what they did all week in their jobs, when they got together, they talked about the war. But behind all their talk, overlaying all their talk, if you will, and all their memories, was this deep sense of gratitude. Every day of their lives for simply being where they were, surrounded by family and friends and people they loved. I understand my father and the men of the neighborhood a lot better now, for I feel very much the same way. A deep sense of gratitude for simply being here. Specifically here, surrounded by you all. And so first, I would like to thank the students, both current students, okay, and former students right behind them. Students, I'd like to thank my many colleagues, and I'd like to thank the bosses that I have had here. John Weirman, Andrew Douglas, Tim Wise, and Pam Sheff. We're going to come back to Pam, though, a little later in the story. She has another role to play here. And of course, the deans, okay? And I want to thank all of them and all of you for giving me the life that I have. I have been a school teacher for literally over 50 years now, half a century. I have taught upwards of 10,000 students over the decades. I actually added it up. And well over half of that time has been spent here. I did not intend to become a teacher when I was an undergrad here. Literally, it was forced on me by my father. He made me do it. So I have yet another reason to be grateful. And for the students here, the young people here, sometimes, just sometimes, your parents actually do know what they're talking about. Okay. After spending 10 years teaching English, history, math, and even kindergarten 1 year. And you talk about fun, okay? I ended up teaching accounting at Villa Julie College, as it was known back then. And from there, I received an invitation to teach accounting at SPISB, as it was known back then. John Weirman hired me out of SPISB to teach accounting in the new Carey program, which was then part of the applied math department. That was the start of my time as a teacher here on this campus. And so, again, yet another reason to be grateful. Students at that time were just beginning to discover entrepreneurship, as it wasn't really an academic subject back then, despite the name of our program. My neighbor at the time, Bob Allen, directed the BME design teams and asked me if we could combine classes. So his students would do the engineering, and my students would do the business analysis, which worked really, really well for exactly one semester, until his students, here's the point, rose in revolt and said, and just refused to work with mine anymore. They wanted to do the business analysis themselves, and they didn't want to outsource it. The result was while continuing to teach for BME, I ended up creating a separate course in entrepreneurship. And from there, it didn't take long to bump into the problem that continues to occupy me until this day. Where do good ideas come from? Where do you get the good ideas to start the entrepreneurial process? Shortly thereafter, Art Shukas led the creation of CBID and invited me to join them. We decided that a key difference between the grad program and the undergrad program would be that the grad students had to find their own needs to work on rather than have them gathered up and handed to them by the BME faculty. So the plan was that students would spend the summer developing a bank of ideas, hundreds of ideas, and then form teams around the best ones by the end of the summer, because as the saying goes, famous, to get good ideas, you have to have lots of ideas. But again, the problem, where do you get those lots of ideas from? And the usual answer has been to get out of the building, to use Steve Blank's phrase, and go see, in this case, what the doctors were struggling with. What new tools and devices do they need? What new tools and devices might CBID students be able to develop for them? And as we all know, the results over the years have been very, very impressive. But there is a problem with this approach. This is, of course, one of my favorite photographs, as the students here know, and it is a photograph of, thank you, okay, of Guglielmo Marconi, okay? And when I ask the typical student, what did Marconi invent, they typically answer, the radio, which is not exactly true. Marconi invented wireless telegraphy to solve a very specific problem. How do you send important messages from point A to point B where there are no wires? And the most obvious place where there are no wires is, of course, at sea. Broadcast radio comes 20 years later. And what exactly is broadcast radio? Well, it's an instrument to send unimportant messages to nobody in particular, and then try to sell them stuff. So here's the question. How do you get from Marconi to radio? And it is unclear to me how just getting out of the building gets you there. Getting out of the building mostly puts you on the road to presentism. Okay, total focus on the problems that the doctors are struggling with right now. Now, do not misunderstand me. What the doctors are struggling with right now is incredibly important, but it's not the end of the innovation story. What about the problems that they might be struggling with 3 years and 5 years and 10 years from now? What new future should they be inventing? And again, it's unclear to me how just getting out of the building answers those kinds of questions. So I continue to struggle with this. Where do good ideas come from? And getting out of the building is certainly one answer, but it can't be the only one, especially if we want to push beyond the present. So the model we built at CBID was this: get out of the building, build a bank of ideas, form teams around the best ideas. In fall 2014, I joined forces with Tony Dabora, and we created a version of this class for the CS department with the same basic design and the same basic problem. How and from where can you get students to come up with better ideas in order to build a better bank? So one possibility is, of course, to just say, your idea is no good. Go find a better one. But that's not an answer. So over time, with BME and CS, and now with ChemBE and ECE and the MSEM, I've tried to develop tools and techniques that could be used to build a better bank of ideas. And then it all started to come together. One bright, sunny day, out of nowhere, Pam came into my office. And those of you who worked with her can picture the scene. Okay, she sat down and said, "Larry, what do you do?" Teach? Maybe? Okay. Yeah. No. All that stuff you do in classes, what do you do? All right, Pam, what's going on? Well, what was going on was that she had seen some advertisement for this, okay, and it made her mad. And she said, "Larry, what I want is for you to create the Hopkins method." She left, okay? Well, to be honest, I had never really thought about it like that. And to turn the classroom work I was doing into a structured methodology. Honestly, I had never really, hadn't really thought about it in those terms. So what this little visit from Pam really did was inspire me to move away from the teaching of entrepreneurship and toward the teaching of innovation, pure and simple. Entrepreneurship is ultimately about the creation of startups, while the search for good ideas for problems worth solving is at the heart of innovation, and this is actually what interested me. Not so much the process of creating the startup, but discovering the illuminating insights and the big ideas that lead to the startup in the first place. The word methodology implies structure, and that's what Pam wanted, and rightfully so. Convert this set of unconnected, random classroom materials I had developed into a structured process for doing innovation, for finding those good ideas at the beginning of the entrepreneurial process, in short, for building that bank of ideas. Shortly thereafter, Pam introduced me to Sasha Cochran, who had also been pondering these matters in his classes, and together we started to work on this. Innovation simply means something new, developing something new. And as the dean mentioned, there are three components to this game if an innovation is to become a startup. Problem, solution, the business case, and they all have to be there. Now, the reality is you can begin anywhere in that triad, okay? But from a classroom perspective, the easiest thing to do is to begin with the problem, specifically with finding problems that are worth solving while trying to move beyond the confines of presentism. So here's an example of a problem that came to me, again, all about the same time, from colleagues at NATO, still a wonderful partner. What will the small combat team of the future look like? Interesting question. So how might students go about answering this? Well, they could get out of the building to go talk to current soldiers. They could, as students want, play video games. They could ask old uncles who may have served in the military way back when, and there's always library research. But however you address this problem, you need to first address a prior problem, which is, what is the future of war? Now, it seems to me that these are two very different kinds of problems, and the problem that we kept running into in class was that we treated them as if they were the same type of problem, when in reality they are different kinds of problems and require different kinds of answers and different kinds of tools for thinking them through. You cannot design a solution for what is the future of war, but you can use this question to explore for problems that are worth solving. It was that simple insight that there are different kinds of problems and they need to be addressed in different kinds of ways that led Sasha and me to start to develop the methodology that Pam was looking for, and that would give a formal structure to the kinds of tools that I had been working on in class. 3 different kinds of problems, what we have ended up calling undefined, ill-defined, and well-defined. Different time horizons, different degrees of uncertainty, and all requiring different kinds of answers to be addressed with different kinds of tools. Only a well-defined problem can be solved in any meaningful sense of the term. By contrast, undefined and ill-defined problems can be used to imagine alternative futures and help us to build that bank of ideas. For example, look at the first one, okay? Clearly a well-defined problem. How can we make a brain-controlled prosthetic hand with a sense of touch for less than $1,000? Okay, this says nothing about whether the problem is easy or hard to solve, only what the solution has to deliver. By contrast, ill-defined problems ask what's the next big thing in this technological or market space. No solution in the normal sense of the word is possible because what the solution needs to deliver is not clear. Rather, the answer, quote unquote, to such a problem is a list of opportunities. And by further contrast, undefined problems are, again, quote unquote, answered by descriptions of possible future states. So the result of all this is that undefined and ill-defined spaces can be, again, explored for opportunities step by step, tool by tool, week by week. For example, one such technique is what we call trending to the absurd. It involves taking a real trend, whatever it is, carrying it to its absurd conclusion, and then asking what might this future look like and what kinds of problems might we find there. For example, what will the future look like if we never see doctors in person ever again? We're not predicting the future, okay? Only asking what kinds of interesting problems might be found in such a future, problems that are worth working on today. Or this, what happens when every student gets an A in every class? What does that mean for assessments, for resumes, for job searches? Like, where's this go? Okay, or this, what happens when all vehicles are electric and all homes have heat pumps? How's that going to work? Okay, as I listened to my ECE colleague, I said, basically, it's not, okay? So what are we going to do? Or how about this, a little closer to home? What will the future look like if government ceases to fund R&D? Okay. The idea here is not to predict the future, but to imagine alternative futures which can be explored in order to build an interesting bank of ideas, the best of which can be turned into well-defined problems that we can then actually try to solve, because every problem is also an opportunity. Nonetheless, this model is only a partial answer to the problem of presentism. So Sasha and I combined it with another model that puts together risk and uncertainty, which are, of course, not the same thing, but can be combined to create the lovely 2x2 box that you see here. By the way, both of the diagrams, this one and this one, were done by Sasha, who is an absolute master at putting together these kinds of diagrams. So one way to think about these boxes is to ask, who plays in them and what kinds of innovations come out of them? The top right is the domain of governments. For example, space travel at the beginning. Who's going to pay for that? Government. What private company would ever enter such a game? But what happens when the when the uncertainty comes down, then big companies with deep pockets can join in? Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, anybody? The bottom left is where engineering grads tend to end up, working on small incremental innovations for existing products. But again, do not misunderstand me, okay? These kinds of small innovations and improvements are critical to making our lives better and safer, but they are not the end of the innovation story, which takes us to the top left. Higher uncertainty, but lower risk. And this is where we want students pushing beyond what they can discover by getting out of the building. Students also need to get out of their own heads. It is uncertainty, not high risk, that gives innovators and entrepreneurs their chance. Look at AI. Why is money and talent flowing into AI right now? Because the outcomes are uncertain. How all this ends up, God only knows. But it's uncertain, and that's what gives innovators, entrepreneurs, their opportunity. Amar Bideh wrote about this 20 years ago and just published a new book on the same thing. If there were no uncertainty, other companies with resources and customers would already be creating products and services in this space. If the uncertainty is low, then all those market and financial tools that we teach are easy to apply. But then there's no opportunity to create what Bideh called promising startups. So the question, and I just had a conversation with the University of Tel Aviv on this, okay? They wanted to know, okay, all good. How do you know which of those ideas are the best? And the point is, you don't. That's the whole point of uncertainty and entrepreneurial opportunity. You don't. By combining these two models, we believe that we have addressed Pam's challenge, okay, and created a structured process for doing innovation, beginning with building that bank of opportunities. We continue to develop this methodology with wonderful partners here at Hopkins. For example, Elizabeth Logsdon and Michelle Zwernerman, Tony Dabora, Lillian Josephson, Lucas Bukafuska, Trevor Mackesy, amongst others, as well as important partners at Technion and the Hebrew University. In short, collaboration is everything, and good collaborators are essential, and so yet another reason to be grateful. To summarize, we have created a structured process for doing innovation. We explore undefined and ill-defined spaces. We try to push the boundaries of uncertainty in order to build a bank of opportunities over the course of the fall term. And then in the spring, turn the best of those opportunities into well-defined problems that can actually be solved and for which a business case can be developed. So, after all this, you might ask, does it work? Okay, really, does it work? I think it works fairly well in our classes, okay, but that's not, that's not a study, that doesn't really count, okay? But as a result of workshops I had given at Technion, I was invited by the Israel Innovation Authority, their version of the NSF, to show them the work that I was doing. The result was a grant issued to Technion with the idea of eventually creating a national program based on this work. We ran the pilot last summer in Haifa. One condition of the grant was that half the participants had to be native Arabic speakers. And the results are, as you can see up on the slide. The results were good enough for the Innovation Authority to fund 2 more pilots, this time with the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, starting this spring. So now here's the question, okay? Where's the story go from here? How does all this scale? And, to our narrow point of view, how am I going to do all this? Well, the short answer is, I'm not. But the AI will. There are really 3 parts to this game. There is my part, first part, the beginning part, the innovation part. There is the follow-up, where teams move from innovation to entrepreneurship. And then there is the overall management structure that ties the first 2 parts together. From that first pilot, developers in Israel have mostly created the latter 2 parts. And together, we are working on creating the first part. The Israeli team plus 2 former students, Clark scholars, Jonathan Edwards and David Calvo. To create an array of AI agents that combine an all-knowing research assistant, mentor, and guide, as well as a tough devil's advocate, all while following the methodology that Pam insisted we create. The idea is for these agents to literally be part of the team. The design right now, as you can see up here on these slides, is for a dialogue panel on the left, accompanied by an interactive canvas where the team can work and assemble their ideas and prepare their deliverables. And this should all be ready to try out here next fall. Anyway, that's the hope. And with that, I'm done. And thank you for listening.
Larry, thank you very, very much for that. Really appreciate that. And you can see why he's such an outstanding teacher. I do want to present you with this memento, the souvenir of this event.